What's up, HyperFast Nation? On this episode of the show, I sat down with a former Marine who turned into a short-term rental investor and now developer. He has taught hundreds of people how to achieve high cash-on-cash returns through developing short-term rental properties. Welcome to the show, Alex Jarbo. All right, welcome to the show today, Alex. How are you doing?
Oh, thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on. We've had other short-term rental people on before, but no one doing, exactly what you're doing, which is short-term rental development. So specifically developing for short-term rentals. So give the audience a little bit of background on yourself and how you got into this pretty cool niche.
Yeah, man. So I started back 7 years ago now in the Marine Corps. I served 4.5 years. The last year of my enlistment, I was like, okay, I had decided I didn't want to enlist. So I just started reading up on a lot of different investing books, whether it be stock market, crypto, real estate. Real estate, it really caught my eye because I just liked the control that you could have over real estate, like with like forced appreciation and all that fun stuff. So I originally joined a flipping mentorship, and what I realized, I was on a call once with the owner of the flipping mentorship, just a group coaching call. And what I realized was the gentleman who ran that flipping mentorship, all of his long-term wealth, even back then, was tied into short-term rentals. So I got him on a separate one-on-one call, and I was like, hey, I really want to get into this. Like, I'm interested in the flipping, but not as much as the short-term rental stuff. So he helped me sort of decide, he taught me how to choose a market, and then obviously how to underwrite a short-term rental. He also showed me his numbers and what his properties were making, and they were just blowing like long-term rentals out of the water. Like if that property was a long-term rental. So he actually helped me decide on where I currently live now. So the day I left the military, I moved straight to Asheville, North Carolina, where I currently live, and I got my broker's license when I got here, my real estate license. And I just started looking for a short-term rental for myself. And what I realized, I was looking for like 6 to 8 months. And what I realized was everything was either way out of my price range or it was in my price range, but it just wouldn't have done well as a short-term rental. Maybe as a long-term rental, but there wasn't like necessarily anything unique about it and like no draw to it. So again, after 6 to 8 months of looking, we decided to develop my very first real estate investment was a new development short-term rental. That was an 800 square foot A-frame that we own to this day. One turned into two really quickly, two turned into four, and then today we're developing $10 million worth of short-term rentals, and we're looking to triple that next year.
So was that first one you bought the land and then built this 800 square foot thing, or?
Yeah, so I had a GC. I didn't build it with my own hands, but yeah, raw land into the vertical development, everything. Yep.
And now you said 10 million this year. How are you funding that much build?
Yeah, so we brought on investors originally. I brought on investors originally just through JVs, and then right now I've partnered up with a couple multifamily funds that are looking to get into short-term rentals to sort of diversify, and just with how even right now is how cap rates can be on how competitive multifamily is right now. There's a couple multifamily investors that have sort of started their own short-term rental funds that I'm essentially the deal finder and operator for. And then we just get normal financing on them, like commercial loans. There's lenders out there finally that will lend on stuff like this, because I think COVID really put short-term rentals in the spotlight.
Talk to me a little bit about deal flow, right? How are you finding the places to develop short-term rentals? What do you look for?
Yeah, so I have a phenomenal real estate agent that keeps me busy. I'm licensed here as well, but she is infinitely better than me. So she has a team. It's not just her. She has a real estate team, and that's mainly where most of my deal flow comes. And what I realized the last like 6 to 8 months is the best use of my time is to focus on like 6 to 12 cabins at the same time and more of like a cluster development compared to trying to go look. I realized best use of my time and all my GC's time, my engineer's time, my architect's time, my real estate agent's time, there was no difference in time between me driving out looking at a 1 acre parcel or looking at a 20 acre parcel. It was the same time. It was just a bigger number and more cabins to develop, which my new GC or my current GC can handle. So when it comes to deal flow, my real estate agent brings me either raw land deals, or right now we're target. There aren't too many of them, but we're targeting like bed and breakfast or like small cabin communities that have some acreage attached to them that we can then develop further properties on. That way, there's sort of a built-in cash flow that helps with our holding costs while we're developing the other cabins as well.
So you cash flow it from day one, but
On some of them, yeah, the ones that we take over,
yeah,
yes, yeah.
you can build like out cabins, or I don't.
Yeah, yeah. So like I like to focus on like permanent foundation stick built houses that our backup plan, if like regulations ever change or anything gets crazy, we can just sell off the properties individually. Like, I mean, we're talking about like 500 to maximum 1,500, 1,600 square foot cabins. Like, there's always going to be a market for those type of properties.
Which markets are you in primarily? Are you focused on just one area, or?
Yeah, just Western North Carolina right now, the mountains of North Carolina. Yeah. We like to stick to these themed type communities, and with that, I'm pretty confident I can build out a portfolio of like 60 to 70 cabins in this market with those themed communities. And when I say themed, like A-frame cottages, chalets, barn, like barn dominion type properties. I feel like when we do like 6 to 12 at the same time, and we're trying to get to 60 to 70 per market, it's there's something unique about the properties where they're not sort of cannibalizing themselves, like where I'm like competing against myself.
What's been your biggest challenge in all of this?
Yeah, just I mean, supply chain issues are going to be the biggest thing in the last couple of years, but fortunately things are getting better. Like, people are scared of this correction we're going through, but what I've seen is like people are starting to settle down a little more. They're not job hopping as much. It's getting easier to find trades, at least in my market, where like we have people actually calling us and people are waiting on us compared to the other way around, which is how it's been in the last couple of years, which is the complete opposite. So yeah, supply chain issues were the biggest issue. Raising capital for these deals surprisingly wasn't, because so many people want to get into short-term rentals. Even last year when I started raising capital, and currently as well. And right now, it's one of the few real estate asset classes that still cash flows with these crazy interest rates we're going through right now.
What is the structure or the offering that you raise capital on?
Yeah, so everyone's going to be different. Everyone's going to be different depending on if I'm working with the fund or if I'm doing the JV like model myself. So if I'm just bringing on a JV, the JV brings the capital. It's one. I don't like to pull in investor capital myself. I'm not syndicating anything myself. So it's mainly just one investor that wants to put in anywhere between a hundred. The lowest I've gone was 100,000 on like 2 cabins. That was prior to COVID. Right now, it's probably like with these larger cabins, anywhere between 400 to 600,000 that they bring to the table. They help me guarantee the loan. I've a pretty good balance sheet, but I still need some help guaranteeing the loan. And then it's a 50-50 right straight across the board. I take a small management fee, about 3 to 7% off the top, and that goes straight to my management company. And then it's a long-term hold for about 8 to 10 years. When it comes to the fund stuff, the current fund that I'm working with, I mean, this is all public knowledge, like sent out in emails. It's usually anywhere between a 5 to 6% preferred return is what we try to get the investors. They get 50% of the deal, and then I get 50% of the general partnership. But again, every single deal is different depending on what the cash flow looks like, what the deal looks like.
What is your outlook for this this part of the market, industry in general, as we enter higher interest rates, recession, all that stuff?
Yeah, it's even outside of that, it's still evolving, and it's constantly evolving. What I'm seeing right now, it's almost going full circle. When I say what I mean by that is short-term rentals have been around forever, right? Like before Airbnb, VRBO, you just had to pick up a phone and call a manager to book a short-term rental. So the way of booking has changed. But what I'm seeing now is that more and more people are building, like the professional managers that have more than 3 to 5 properties. They're building out their own sites and pushing people to their own websites outside of Airbnb and VRBO. When it comes to the outlook with the recession and everything, I mean, we're aggressively purchasing properties right now. And I mean, we're getting discounts on these properties. Like the property that we currently got right now, I mean, we didn't get it at list price. We got it pretty well below list price. But so we're aggressively purchasing, but my whole, like, I guess, thesis, if you want to call it that, for my business is investing in developing unique cabins or properties where the property itself is an experience outside of the city that the guest is visiting. And that's really key. I like to say, and I hate to say this term because I've gotten some kickback about it because it's not quantifiable. But I say Instagrammable properties, properties that people are proud to put on their social media, that you would be to put on your social media. And I've gotten kickback about that. So, okay, how do you quantify that? I mean, you can't, but you can look at my occupancy numbers, and we're at 90% occupancy plus throughout the whole year. The unique properties outside of what the market is currently doing are also a little bit less seasonal, where again the property becomes the attraction during the slow season, and then during the high season it's still an attraction, but the city becomes the market that you're investing in becomes the attraction. So I mean we're aggressively invested in this current market.
What do you do to make properties Instagrammable or attractive like that?
Yeah, I mean the structure is the biggest thing. So if people are listening, like I just have a house. How do I do it? How do I do that? On the inside of the property, you can play around with like accent walls and different textures. I've seen people do murals on the inside of the houses, even on the outside, but inside, playing around with the design of the inside of the house. But when the reason why I focused on development is because we can optimize the like for especially with how high prices currently are, and they're probably going to stay like this forever. Is that like we optimized the floor plan completely. Like that first, all of our cabins, but that first cabin we built 6 years ago, there wasn't one wasted square foot in that entire thing. But yeah, what makes them unique is like people love staying in like the A-frames, the cottages. We're playing around with tree houses right now, like houses on stilts practically. But that's what makes them Instagrammable is like a unique structure. But again, like all of our properties have full kitchens, full bathrooms. So they're still houses, but you're just playing around with the structure and the design of the property.
Yeah, I like that overall concept idea of, you know, how do you make your property stand out? And when, you know, we had Michael Alfonte on the podcast once talking about that. He hasn't done the development part like you, but he's talked about murals inside of the house or accent walls and things that bump you from like the middle range of Airbnbs to like the top 90%.
Yeah, absolutely. And then when you start focusing on the uniqueness or like what you were talking about with the murals and the accent walls, that opens you up to also influencer marketing. That's a small little segment right now of the short-term rental world that's starting to become really big, of reaching out to traveling influencers, trading a couple days that probably wouldn't have booked anyways, maybe paying for flights. Like I paid for a flight for a gentleman, and they essentially are doing a full photo shoot, maybe they're putting it on their YouTube channel, and then you're feeding people either to your direct booking site or directly to your Airbnb link. Influencer marketing that's a completely different world that gets opened up when you focus on the unique properties.
You said that's a new area, like people that hasn't really taken off yet.
Most of the managers that I talk to on a daily basis, like I mastermind with, like throughout the whole country and then even nationally, most of them aren't doing that. I might just be in the wrong circles. Like my circle hasn't done that, but I haven't heard anything about it. So, yeah, no, I'm super excited about that. We have influencers going to all of our properties in the next like 2 months.
Wow, that's a interesting tactic. I think I've heard of this, you know, one other person maybe talking about this before, but I haven't seen a ton of that yet. And you know, I could.
Yeah, and I mean another thing you can do is instead of having someone go to your property is just pay for like a social media post or something on Instagram if you already have the pictures to your property. That's another way to do it, which is essentially influencer marketing as well, but just they're not going out to your property.
What are some of the things that if someone was listening to this that they should think about if they want to get into the short-term rental game but haven't done it before? What should they consider or what do you wish you knew about?
Yeah, man, that's a phenomenal question. So developing or purchasing, so either or, if they're just looking to get into it, you want to think of the entire guest experience. And when I say entire guest experience, that means the experience driving to and from your property outside of just your property yourself. So when I say that is the first thing you want to think about when you're looking to purchase, get into a property, develop a property, you want to think of the access to the property. You don't want your guests to be driving 30 minutes up a gravel road before they even get to your property. A lot of times they're driving in at night. A lot of times they're new to the area. and you don't want them to be pissed off or scared by the time they even get to your property. So access to the property is huge. We like to be off of some sort of paved road. We develop, so like we'll put in our own driveways if we need to, if it's not crazy steep, but we won't put in like a mile driveway or anything crazy like that. Like the most we've done is like maybe a quarter mile, and it's relatively flat for the most part. But yeah, that's the first thing to think about is just access to the property, because that's the whole guest experience from there, and just what the property looks like, or like the surrounding properties look like. You don't want to be surrounded by like just a whole bunch of rundown properties.
What's the typical cash on cash return for these types of investments that you personally target?
Yeah, man. So like for our investors, we like to be anywhere between 12 to 15% annual, or at least by the time they get out of the deal. That's the goal. If it's projects that you're just working on yourself, man, I'll give you a really good example. So the very first one, granted, this budget was done prior to COVID, so you can adjust these numbers based off that, maybe discount them by 20 or 30%. But our very first cabin we built turnkey with the land, furnishing everything for about 250 grand. I probably put about 40 grand of my own money into that project, 45 grand. That project grossed last year. I mean, it's been renting out for 5 years now, but that cabin grossed $82,000 last year, and it netted about 46,000 after debt service and all bills. So it's like my cash on cash was essentially 100% every year. Yeah, so discount that by 30, even 40% if you want to get more conservative. Like if you're doing it yourself, it's a crazy number if you have the right property, man. Like again, that property can sleep. It has a loft with a ladder that leads to it and a bedroom on the downstairs and then a queen pull-out couch, so it can sleep 6 people. In 800 square foot, it's an open floor plan for the most part. If you optimize the floor plan right, where you're not wasting square footage, and it's a unique property, dude, they're gonna cash flow like crazy. Like imagine if you have 3 of those. Even if you just have 3 of those, you're pretty much set like with your cash flow. Like that's 120. If I do have 3 of them, but 3 of them cash flow close to like 120 grand a year. Like imagine how many long-term rentals or multifamily units you would need to cash flow that after debt service. Is my line of thinking when I think about stuff like that.
I've always thought that's mind-boggling about short-term rentals. Is exactly that point. Is like one short-term rental property can cash flow as much as like hundreds of units of multifamily. So
Yeah, man. And the numbers that's a $250,000 cabin. Like one cabin.
how does that opportunity even exist? It seems crazy.
I mean, just the barrier to entry, I feel like people are just intimidated by the building aspect of it. I think that's what it is. Yeah.
Like why haven't you would think more money would pour into this, right? And the prices would all come up to
Yeah, I feel like with me sharing my numbers on this, man, people are like, oh, okay, and then just like yeah. But I mean, if you can find the right GC, and like I said, things are not loosening up, but things are getting a little like GCs are open to more projects now because things are slowing down on the residential custom side. Um, I I think you can find a GC relatively easily just by calling around. But don't get me wrong, like that very first property, we probably looked at 40 different pieces of land before we find the right one. So I mean, it did take some work, but obviously now that work is we put in that work 5, 6 years ago, and now it's like it's just I'll never sell those properties because we don't have any investors on those first couple ones.
Well, if you recently came out with a product, right, to help teach people about how to go out and do this so that they don't have to start from scratch. They can learn from, someone who's been down the path already.
Yeah, I had a lot of yeah, I had a lot of people reaching out to me, just in my circle, and there's also friends that were seeing and family and that was seeing what I was doing, and I just didn't have time to take all those calls, like with the people who were cold calling or like reaching out to me like in my DMs and stuff. So, I essentially I sat down and I created the course that I wish I had when I started like 6 years ago. So there's like a group coaching aspect to it. There's templates, workbooks. There's over 120 videos, everything that you would need. To do what I currently do. And we just got our first couple students running through that, and I'm super excited about it.
Awesome. Well, if people want to get access to that or learn about that, how do they do it?
Yeah, so my personal website, there's a button to just enroll now, but it's alexjarbo.com, alexjarbo.com, and then it'll be on your right corner is where you can just enroll in the course for that go through the little sales video that we have, and then, I mean, I'm completely honest here. Like we're not charging like a crazy amount. We're just trying to get as many students as we can through the course, because anybody who asks me about what I do, I send them straight to that course, because that is I brain dumped everything that I've worked on the last 6 years into that course.
Awesome. Well, we'll make sure we put that in the show notes and links to it and all that. So if you're listening to this and want to learn how to do this, make sure you check that out. Alex, we always end with a HyperFast round. If you are ready for some rapid fire Q&A.
Let's get it.
All right. What's your biggest piece of advice to a new real estate investor?
Focus on one thing, man. Like, focus on one asset class, focus on one thing, and just spend at least an hour, but I would recommend 3 hours a day on that one thing. Don't get scatterbrained, and things are going to get difficult. Just push through and focus on one asset class when you first start.
What is one thing you're doing in your business now that you were not doing a year ago?
I love that, man, especially with how much that's changed in the last year. I've brought on, outside of investors, I've just brought on more experienced GCs, like with GCs that have the crews and have the reputation that can knock out these like larger $2.5-5 million projects.
All right. What's a mistake that you see experienced investors making?
Jumping like ties into the first question. Jumping ship, man. Like, things are getting hard in their asset class or something, so the jump from multifamily to self-storage to blah blah blah, but without really too much experience. Like, okay, like the numbers for the most part are the same. Like when you talk about cash on cash and blah blah blah, like cap rates and IRRs and everything. But on top of that, like, there are little differences that exist in every single real estate asset class, and I think people can get in trouble if they're constantly jumping from one thing to the other.
All right. If you had to start over today and you could only take the knowledge that you've acquired with you, what's the first thing you would go out and do?
I would have. This is gonna be scary for people who are starting. I would have started bigger. I would have, if I knew what I know now, I would have immediately started with like 12 cabins, and I just would have raised the capital, and I would have gotten less of the deal that way. But at least I would be confident in my abilities that where I'm at now. Yeah, I would have started bigger. I would have literally started with 12 right off the bat.
All right, last question. Where do you see yourself 5 years from now?
Yeah, man. So my wife and I are working on putting together a 501c3 nonprofit, and we want to pour a lot of our time into that. Just helping our parents. So I was a Marine, but my parents were born and raised in northern Iraq, and a lot of stuff that got, like, where my family like grew up, a lot of the stuff was destroyed there by like ISIS and stuff in 2013, and this is getting down a completely different rabbit hole. But we plan on like putting some money into like rebuilding some of those communities overseas.
Awesome. I love it. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today, Alex. For people that want to connect with you, learn more about what you do, can you just remind them best places they should go, or social media, or whatever you prefer?
Yeah, man. Yeah, alexjarbo.com. You guys can find all my stuff there. I have a free YouTube channel as well that I go through all the projects I'm currently going through. You guys can check out my previous interviews there. That's where my course, the intro to my course lives. And then you guys can connect with me on LinkedIn as well. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, in the comment section of my YouTube channel as well.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today, Alex. To all of our listeners and viewers, thank you for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe, leave us reviews, all that good stuff. And please share this episode. This was gold. This is an amazing asset class. Thank you again, Alex, and we will see you all next time.
Awesome. Thanks, man.